friends, welcome or welcome back to the Infinite Library, and today we're finally going to be doing the last video in my Reading the Goodreads 2023 Choice Awards project, and it's time for the big old doozy of a genre, adult fantasy. I purposely did leave this till last because I know some of the chunkiest books are going to be in that one, and originally I had planned to pit it into the last video, so it was going against sci-fi and romance, but that video was just getting ridiculously long and I really didn't want it to be like over 2 hours for that video, for the final video. So I've decided just to split it off entirely, and honestly it kind of works because not only has it taken me quite a bit longer than I intended to get to the fantasy, but also I totally forgot that fantasy is a final genre, which means that we're going to be doing our final sort of ranking of which genre is like the best, the worst. For me, I've basically been average rating each of the genres as we've been going. I'm interested to see where fantasy is going to sit in there and what is going to be the overall my favorite genre. So without further ado, let us go to past me picking the books for fantasy. So it's time to pick the best fantasy books. So straight away, I know I'm going to be reading the winner, which is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I purposely went and read Ninth House earlier this year so that I could read this. It won by so much as well, like over 75,000 votes. Part of me thinks it's because it's Leigh Bardugo, but I did genuinely enjoy Ninth House. I gave it a 4-star. So this is a sequel, obviously, to the first one. It's a dark academia, fantasy horror kind of thing. And we are following this character called Alex, who basically has been given this prestigious scholarship because she can actually see ghosts and that kind of thing. Because she's actually part of this like secret society called Ninth House that basically work with all the magical secret societies on campus to kind of police them and make sure stuff doesn't really like get worse than it is already. So I'm not going to tell you the synopsis for this because it does kind of spoil things to do with the original, but I did really enjoy it. Apart from thought there was way too much sexual assault kind of stuff that was in it. I'm really hoping we don't get as much of that in this one. But yeah, I liked it a lot. It's an urban fantasy, which is my kind of thing. It's quite chunky, but I think probably around the same size as Ninth House, and I'm expecting to like it, quite honestly. So I imagine I probably have read quite a few of the books on this list. So I've already read the runner-up, which does mean that I can basically just read 2 other books that I find interesting on this list. So yeah, I read Tress at the Emerald Sea, which came second. I didn't love it, unfortunately. I think I gave it either a 3 or a 4. Yeah, a 3. That sounds about right. I feel like I probably gave it a 4 originally, and then I'm thinking about it, I was like, no, it's a 3 for me. It's not a bad book, don't get me wrong. It just didn't quite work for me as much as I think I wanted it to. It's a very kind of whimsical story based off The Princess Bride about this girl called Tress. The world building is really interesting. Basically all the oceans are different colours, hence Emerald Sea, and they do different things depending on the colours. So the green ocean basically is like spores that can take you over, I think. So they're all very dangerous, but she basically wants to go after this guy that she's in love with after he doesn't return, and she ends up trying to rescue him from this deadly sorceress. It's very fun. She gets on the ship. I liked it more once she stowed away on the ship and all the characters that were introduced at that point. But yeah, it just wasn't like amazing for me, unfortunately, although I can definitely see how it would be a favourite for other people. Third is A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This is actually a prequel to The Prior of the Orange Tree. It is absolutely huge at 868 pages. I have read The Prior of the Orange Tree, so technically I could read this, but I don't want to because I didn't love Prior of the Orange Tree, unfortunately. I gave it a high 3, low 4 maybe, but I honestly didn't love it as much as I was expecting to. So I'm not really expecting to love Day of Fallen Night either, so I'm gonna veto it because of that. Emily Wild's Encyclopedia of Fairies, I read it, I gave it a 4-star. I've also read the sequel, and this is about, it's like a Grumpy Sunshine relationship about this scholarly woman who's very grumpy called Emily Wilde. She's trying to make an encyclopedia of the Fae, and she basically goes to like do some field work, and her like rival scholar like also shows up, and they get embroiled in various phase stuff that's happening. It gets darker than I thought it was going to, and it's definitely a book that has just stuck with me even more after I've read it. So yeah, really enjoyed that one. Bookshops and Bone Dusts. See, I could read this one because I read Legends and Lattes, which I loved. I think I 5-starred it. I don't know. I'm already reading a sequel is the thing. Well, this is a prequel, but like I'm already reading a book in a series. So I kind of want to read first book in a series or a standalone more so. So even though I own this, I could read it. I will probably love it. I don't think I'm going to pick it. Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. This is the start of her new series, The Threads of Power. I really like V.E. Schwab. I've loved basically everything of hers that I've read so far. But the issue of this is that I know this is set in the same world as the Darker Shade of Magic series, which I haven't read yet. And I feel like I'm really going to be missing stuff because this is set after those events. And I don't really want to spoil things for me from that series, so I'm not going to read it because of that, even though it may even have been a contender for the winner. Oh, here we go. Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. I hated this book. I rated it 2 stars. It was not for me. Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi. So this is my favourite of all the fantasy books on here. I believe that I've actually read. I rated this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. As you can see, I voted for it. This was just perfection to me. It's about a retired pirate woman who has to come back for like one last venture, basically get the crew back together, and it's just really good. I loved it so much. Here we go. Now we have one that could be a good contender. Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I've read one thing by her before, which I didn't mind. I thought this was more of a horror than a fantasy though, which is quite interesting. So this has a 3.83 rating at the moment. A grim and gothic tale. It is fantasy horror. So let's read what it's about. Eden, Kentucky is just another die in bad luck town known only for the legend of E. Starling, the reclusive 19th century author and illustrator who wrote The Underland and disappeared. Before she vanished, Starling House appeared, but everyone agrees that it's best to let the uncanny house and its last lonely heir, Arthur Starling, go to rot. Opal knows better than to mess with haunted houses or brooding men, but an unexpected job offer might be a chance to get her brother out of Eden. Too quickly, though, Starling House starts to feel dangerously like something she's never had, a home. As sinister forces converge on Starling House, Opal and Arthur are going to have to make a dire choice to dig up the buried secrets of the past and confront their own fears, or let Eden be taken over by literal nightmares. So yeah, this is a standalone, which I like. I am very intrigued by this one, so I think this is a good contender, honestly. Next we have The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. I think have I read something by Adrienne Young before? I feel like I have, you know. Or she's just an author I've seen around a lot. Oh, she also writes Spells for Forgetting. No, I haven't read anything by her. I just have seen her a lot, I think. So this is another standalone. It is fantasy magical realism. A woman risks everything to end her family's century-old curse, solve her mother's disappearance, and find love in this mesmerizing novel. Small town, mountain town of Jasper, North Carolina. Another one set in America. June Farrow is waiting for fate to find her. The Farrow women are known for their thriving flower farm and the mysterious curse that has plagued their family line. The whole town remembers the madness that led to Susanna Farrow's disappearance, leaving June to be raised by her grandmother and haunted by rumours. It's been a year since June started seeing and hearing things that weren't there. Faint wind chimes, a voice calling her name, and a mysterious door appearing out of nowhere. The signs of what June always knew was coming. But June is determined to end the curse once and for all, even if she must sacrifice finding love and having a family of her own. After her grandmother's death, June discovers a series of cryptic clues regarding her mother's decades-old disappearance, except they only lead to more questions. But could the door she once assumed was a hallucination be the answer she's been searching for? The next time it appears, June realises she can touch it and walk past the threshold, and when she does, she embarks on a journey that will not only change both the past and the future, but also uncover the lingering mysteries of her small town and entangle her heart in an epic star-crossed love. I am really interested in that, but it feels very heavily like there's going to be a lot of romance, so I don't know. It's a contender, I think, for now. Then we have the first of the many Greek mythology retellings. I'm going to tell you straight away, I'm not picking any of these because I'm kind of sick of them. To be fair, I am getting to a point where I'm starting to be more interested in reading mythology retellings again, but like, I just remember when this list came out, and we had like 3 different Greek retellings, and I'm just not impressed. So on principle, I'm not picking any of these, even if they are good and I want to read them, which, as you can see, I do want to read Stoneblind. But I'll tell you about them anyway. So this is Stoneblind by Natalie Haynes. This is about Medusa. Let's just go down and pick out the other Greek mythologies to get them out of the way. So we have this one, Atalanta, and we have Clytemnestra. I can't even say that one, I'm sorry. Clytemnestra. So this is a debut. She is a notorious villainess, apparently. I actually don't remember who she was in ancient Greece, to be honest. These are all like female-led ones as well, which is why I'm a bit bored. They're just all the same kind of thing. So we have one from Jennifer Saint as well, which is about Atalanta, which she was like a huntress and was known as the only woman in the Argonauts. It sounds okay, but I'm just not interested. Okay, The Books That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This is one I've really got my eye on because I really do love Mark Lawrence books, but I've never read any of his more recent books, which he's going into more of a cozy fantasy vibe, I believe. So let's read what this is about. This is going to be part of a trilogy as well, which the second book I know is out. I do own both of them, I just haven't got to them yet. So, a boy has lived his whole life trapped within a vast library older than empires and larger than cities. A girl has spent hers in a tiny settlement out in the dust where nightmares stalk and no one goes. The world has never even noticed them. That's about to change. Their stories spiral around each other across worlds and time. This is a tale of truth and lies and hearts and blurring of one into another. That really doesn't tell me very much, I've got to say. All I know is that this is about a library and a boy and a girl. They get involved with it. I've heard really good things about it. It still has a really solid rating here of 4.04, so it's definitely a contender. Right, next we have Ink Bliss as Scribe, which I'm not going to be picking because I've actually picked this for the debut category because the highest one in there basically, so I'm not picking that one. Here we go. This one is a very strong contender, and I think I'm probably going to pick this one because I've heard nothing but good things about this. This is The Blood of the Many by James Islington. It's a very high rating here of 4.62, and this is a dark academia. It might not actually be dark academia, I just know it's about academia. So let's read what it's about. The Catanaean Republic, the hierarchy, may rule the world now, but they do not know everything. I tell them my name is Vis Telemus. I tell them I was orphaned after a tragic accident 3 years ago, and that good fortune alone has led to my acceptance into their most prestigious school. I tell them that once I graduate, I will gladly join the rest of civilized society in allowing my strength, my drive, and my focus, what they call will, to be leached away and added to the power of those above me as millions already do, as all must eventually do. I tell them that I belong, and they believe me. But the truth is that I have been sent to the academy to find answers, to solve a murder. Oh, it's a mystery. Okay. To search for an ancient weapon, to uncover secrets that may tear the Republic apart. And that I will never ever cede my will to the empire that executed my family. To survive, though, I will have to rise through the academy's ranks. I will have to smile and make friends and pretend to be one of them and win. Because if I cannot, then those who want to control me, who know my real name, will no longer have any use for me. And if the hierarchy finds out who I truly am, they will kill me. That sounds amazing, honestly. This is a very chunky one, though. This is 630 pages, but I kind of want to read it. So that's a very strong contender. Right, on to the last 4. And I'm going to tell you right away, I don't think I want to read any of these ones right now. Let's look at them quickly. But I already know I'm not going to pick any of these. So Last Tale of the Flower Bride, I actually thought this was a horror, so I was really confused when I found this in the fantasy category. This is like a gothic story about a woman who marries this man, but I believe she makes him promise that he won't find out anything about her past, but obviously he does. I do really want to read this. It just doesn't give me fantasy, it gives me horror, so I kind of don't want to pick it for this category. Victory City by Salman Rushdie. I think, have I read anything by Salman Rushdie before? I'm not sure. So this is historical fantasy set in the 14th century of the Common Era in the south of what we now call India. 9-year-old Pampa Campana, orphaned by war, starts hearing the voice of a goddess. Inspired and imbued with powerful magic, she vows to ensure that no more women suffer her beloved mother's unconscionable fate. Aided by miracles and a gift of prophecy, she creates a mighty city. Her whispered words galvanize its people to grow and change. Her poetry maps the rise and fall of its empire. And the prophetess herself, beloved, feared, timeless, watches as the world changes across the centuries, and her body, frozen in the beauty of youth for decades upon decades, fades along with her city's glory. Half a millennium later, her writing is discovered deep in the ancient earth. Sounds like it's something that's spread over a very long time period and is probably not going to be a quick read. It's not massively long though. It's 336 pages. I really thought it was going to be a lot longer because it sounds very epic, but it's not calling to me. Okay, Witch King by Martha Wells. I do own this. I have read the first book in the Murderbot series before by Martha Wells, which I did quite like. I've not heard great things about this book though. And to be honest, the premise doesn't really appeal to me, so I'm not going to pick it. Basically, this is about someone who was murdered called Kai. He wakes to find a lesser mage attempting to harness Kai's magic to his own advantage. But why was he imprisoned in the first place? He needs to find allies, and he uses pain magic to try and find these answers to his questions, basically. Yeah, not feeling it. And then the very last one, which, yeah, I'm probably not going to pick because at the end of the day, this is the very bottom one on the list. It's Indigenous, though, which I didn't realise. It's called Venko. I thought it was called Coven, but it's not. It's called Venko. This is about a lady called Lucky St. James, a millennial living with her cantankerous but loving grandmother Stella, and then she discovers that they will both going to be evicted from the tiny Toronto apartment. Something strange calls out to her one night, and she finds a silver spoon etched with a crooked-nosed witch and the word Salem. Hundreds of miles away in Salem, Myrna Good has been looking for Lucky. Myrna works at Venko, a front company fueled by vast resources of dark money. Lucky is familiar with the magic of her indigenous ancestors, but she has no idea that the spoon links her to Venko's network of witches throughout North America. Generations of witches have been waiting for centuries for the 7 spoons to come together. Oh, this is like the Dragon Balls, except it's spoons. Okay, so they're trying to get a bunch of spoons together, to which is going to restore their power, but a witch hunter is going to be involved to find the last spoon. Oh, she's going on an adventure with her grandmother, though. I kind of love that. That's nice. I like that. That alone has kind of saved the premise of the book for me, but not enough for me to pick it. So, let's do the final picks. I'm obviously going to pick Hellbent. In between Starling House, The Book That Wouldn't Burn, and The Will of the Many. I'm most intrigued by The Will of the Many, so I think I'm going to order it from the library. And then I think I'm going to pick between Starling House and The Book That Wouldn't Burn. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going with. So, I'm coming at you with an update because I have most of the books now that I'm going to be reading for this month. I do have all the fantasy books. I have Hellbent, obviously, which is the sequel to Ninth House. I have The Will of the Many. And then I have 2 choices for my third book because I wasn't quite sure. I do think I'm going to want a shorter book. So I have got Starling House, which I think is probably what I'm going to pick for my third book. But I also do own The Book That Wouldn't Burn, and I did want to get to this, but it's so chunky. I just don't think reasonably it's going to be a good fit for this blog, even though I love this author and I do think that it has a high likelihood of being a favourite of mine. But I think for this I probably will go for Starling House just because you can see the size difference. Will of the Many is a chunker. This is, I want to say, yeah, it's over 600 pages. This one, Hellbent, is fairly chunky, but not too bad. It's almost 500 pages, but I found Ninth House to be really readable. So I do think I'll get through it quite fast. So that's it. I'm just going to get knuckle down and start reading. So I have started Starling House. I am just about to hit chapter 6 on this, and I'm having a good time with it so far. I literally just DNF'd a book that was an arc right before starting this, and you know that feeling where you read something that is just so bad, and then you read something and it's like, it's so easy to read. And that is how I'm feeling with this. So far, it's feeling kind of YA, I gotta say. Like, our main character is in her, I think she's like 24, 25, 26 or something, so mid-20s, but it kind of feels YA to me. She kind of feels like she's younger than she is. And basically our main character is very like down on her luck, and she ends up kind of getting called into this house, which is owned by this weird guy, and there's a whole history with that, and he's supposed to be a guardian, and there is like a heritage, and the house wants her for some reason, and I think he's trying to stop it from happening, but I don't really know where it's going at this point. But I'm enjoying it. I think it's probably going to be a bit of a slow burn, and again, I am feeling that this is definitely like fantasy leaning into horror, I suppose, but I don't know if it is actually going to properly go down that horror thing. It's gothic fantasy. But I'm having a good time with it so far. It's not like blowing me away, but I'm liking it and I'm intrigued to see where it's going. I do like the main character quite a lot. I like how normal she is, to be honest, and how she just doesn't really give a crap about all the things that are happening. She's quite savvy, and she really is just there to like get stuff done and make things happen, and I like that about her. Even though she has like a dark-haired tragic backstory, it's not really stopping her in making sure things happen, which I like. So yeah, I am enjoying it so far. There's not really a lot to say about it, but I will check in maybe when I get to like the halfway point or something, once I know exactly where this plot is going, because I feel like I just don't at the moment. I feel she's going to be drawn into this world where the house very much kind of feels like another character in this book. It's feeling a lot almost like how the house was in Where the Dark Stands Still, where the house is almost like a spirit that needs to be looked after or appeased, and it's going to have effects on the people within it. It's feeling very much like that so far. And yeah, I'm just not sure where it's going, but I'm liking it. So yeah, that is it for me so far. So I just thought I'd mention a couple of unusual formatting stuff that this book does. So as you can see, I'm on chapter 9 now. At the start of every chapter, it does this kind of thing that's almost like it's the start of a fairy tale book, where it just has like a really small paragraph, which is very fun. And it also has lots of footnotes throughout that just kind of like comment on things that's happening in the text as if it's like historical document or something. It's weird, but I quite like it. It makes it feel like you're either reading like a fairy tale or some kind of historical document. I am further on now, as I say, middle of chapter 9, about 70 pages or so. I'm liking it, but I'm not like super invested at the moment yet, and it still is feeling very YA. So I finished my first fantasy book, Starling House, and I'm sad to say it's a high 3. I did enjoy this book. I did like it overall, but you know when something is just good and not great, and that's kind of how it felt like this book was to me. It's not really telling a particularly original story. I've read very similar things like it, and I really like Alex E. Harrow's writing style. I think it's really pretty and poetic. I really like the main characters in this book. I think they're all really interesting. I like all the side characters that we get in it. But it just felt like I didn't quite connect with this book as I have done with other sort of similar stories. It's got a lot of echoes of a dark Alice in Wonderland kind of story. We've got the kind of, I don't want to say typical story, but honestly it is kind of a typical story of a man who is burdened with responsibility and a woman who comes into his life and helps him be free from it. It's a lot about the legacy of pain throughout families. It's a lot about a woman who is just gonna keep fighting, basically, who is our main character in this book, and I really liked it for what it was. I just don't think it's gonna be a book that sticks with me, unfortunately. I would maybe reread it again. It was good, it just wasn't amazing, and I just feel like I was reading echoes of other books I've read in other years that were just kind of better at doing this kind of adult reimagining of a fairy tale. What happens to the little girl who disappears underground to escape the monsters, and what monsters come from that. So yeah, it was good. I did like it. I can see why it wasn't one of the higher rated ones in Goodreads, unfortunately. I would read more by Alexi Hara because I think she does really interesting things with her writing. I think her writing's very interesting. I like the themes that she explores, and I like her characters. I'll say that the characters are probably the strongest part in this book, and I am including the house itself as a character. The house is very much a living, breathing personality in this book, which I really like. I love that kind of thing where a place has personality and a life of its own, and it kind of reacts to the people around it. So there's a lot to love about this book. I just think, unfortunately, I've seen it done very similarly before, and better. Still a good book if you're really into that kind of story of like adult fairy tale retellings. If you want a really good flawed female protagonist who is not like your typical kind of good girl who's trying to do the right thing. I really enjoyed Opal as the protagonist in this book. She just had so much to her and was very relatable, and even when like you could see that the things that she was doing to try and protect other people was not going to be received well, I still was kind of rooting for her the whole time. So yeah, it's got some really good things about this book, but I just don't think it's original enough, and I thought it did some really good things. I've just seen it done better, sadly. So yeah, sadly that is my review of Starling House. Definitely did enjoy it, not regretting I read it, and you know, a 3.75 is still a really good rating. It's almost a 4-star, and I was thinking for maybe the first 30% or so that this was going to be a 4-star, and then it kind of hit a lull for me towards the middle, and I don't know if it's just because I was dealing with some like mental health stuff at the time, at the same time where the book also got really dark, and that was just not a good like match for me at that time. So it kind of put me off wanting to pick it up, and I felt better once I did pick it up again, and I did like where it went, but I think it's just a bit of a miss for me, unfortunately. But we are now going to move on to the next fantasy book. Actually, when I got to about 75% of the way through, I picked up Hellbent. So I've started reading Hellbent now by Leigh Bardugo, which of course is the winner of the fantasy category, and I'm enjoying it so far. Again, it's kind of that feeling of, even though I really do like the writing in this book, I found the writing in Hellbent automatically so easy to get into, which was really nice. Obviously, I didn't read Ninth House that long ago, but it is still about 6 months ago, so I was a little worried I wasn't going to quite be able to pick things up from where it was, but actually it's quite easy just getting back straight into it again, which I'm very glad about. And yeah, I'm only 3 chapters or so into Hellbent at the moment, but I am enjoying it so far and intrigued to see where it's going. Yeah, you'll see more updates from me soon. Okay, so I'm finally updating you about Hellbent. I have been on and off listening to the audiobook of this, and I'm about to hit the 50% mark where the thing they've been planning for most of the book is finally about to happen, which is to do with the title of the book. And I'm honestly finding this kind of frustrating, and almost more so than I found the first book. I really get vibes sometimes with this book series, of the Anita Blake series, where you're following this main female character and they have one plot line going on, but they've also got these like other plot lines kind of going on concurrently, and it keeps swapping back and forth between it. And the unfortunate thing is I don't really care or really understand the plot line going on that much, and it just feels like it's taking up time. I would much rather if we had just focused fully on the quest to go to hell to rescue Daniel Arlington, and maybe some stuff that's going on with the shake-up of the infrastructure in Lethe. I don't care about all the other stuff that Alex is involved with that's just like tiring her out more. I know it's supposed to just be a thing like it's tiring her out more, so she's like hitting her limits, but I just don't really care, and it feels like it's just making the story overlong. It's making the plot more needlessly complex than it needs to be, and is just losing my interest, unfortunately. I am still liking it, but I'm definitely again feeling the problematicness of some of the things that are happening. And I say I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the idea of what's happening. I don't know if I'm enjoying the actual process of being in it. I think it's well written. I think there's definitely some great ideas, and I do like the characters. I like that we're getting a bit more in-depth on certain characters that were in the first book. Characters such as Dawes and Mercy, who were more peripheral characters initially in the first book and are becoming much more main characters. But I'm still just kind of finding the experience sort of frustrating, and I definitely do think that I'm probably, if this becomes more of a series, if there are more books that Leigh Bardugo does in Alex Stern, I don't think she's said anything about that at the moment, I'm not really bothered about carrying it on. This book is a book I think that it just misses the mark for me, and I find it a bit of a frustrating reading experience. I've had to go and look at some reviews on Goodreads just to see if it can validate how I'm feeling, because this has obviously such a high rating, but I'm actually seeing other people talking about the flaws in this book specifically, and why this is a book that has been more frustrating to read than really living up to the promise of what it could be. Yeah, kind of a mixed reading experience. I feel like, again, it's probably going to end up being a low 4, much like how the first book... No, actually, I think the first book is more of a mid 4 for me. The things I didn't really like in the first book as much was the problematic stuff, but there's more going on in this one that I'm not keen of, so I'm probably actually going to be rating Hellbent lower at this point. Granted, I'm only 50%. This could really change up in the last half and really change things. I don't know, I'm just not having a very good, comfortable experience reading this book, and not that it needs to be a comfortable experience, but it feels like I'm just finding more things that I'm not liking as we're going on as I am liking, which is really unfortunate. I'm going to try and make this update quick, even though I have a lot to say about this book. I stayed up late last night to finish it because I just wanted it to be done, to be honest, and I feel really mixed about this book. I honestly don't even know what rating I'm going to give it at this point in time. Part of me feels like it should be a low 4, but also there was so much that I didn't like about this book that I almost feel like it should also be in the 3 bracket. I just really found this book to be a very exhausting read and a very frustrating read. It definitely did again deal with some of the problematic stuff that I didn't like from Ninth House, and I think this book is maybe too long. I will say, like, I don't think it needed to be as long as it is, especially when it kind of gets a bit repetitive towards the end. I will say it definitely did hook me in that latter part from The Descent, basically. I was really interested in where it was going, and it's really annoying because this and Ninth House, I think it's perhaps one of the most well-written series that Leigh Bardugo has wrote in terms of the writing, because I think there is some really gorgeous writing in here. I think there's some really great things that are happening There's some really good characterization, particularly with Alex, and actually with Turner as well, who was another character in this, who I really enjoyed the extra characterization we got. But there's just some things in this that really stopped me from loving it. I think I mentioned that there is a lot of different plot lines that keep kind of distracting Alex from the main "we're going to hell" plot, which is really the most important plot line. And they did eventually come in towards the end, and like it did make sense why they were there, but I just think we wasted too much time on it and too much energy on it. And this is very much a book that it feels like the stakes just keep getting higher and higher and higher, and there is no break at all. And Alex as protagonist and you as the reader is just getting more tired and more tired and more tired, and it's very exhausting to read. I actually have to run off now, but I will come back and hopefully have a few more thoughts to say about this, because I just feel very mixed. Okay, so I was so confused about what to rate this book that I'm deciding to core pile it, because I just can't put my thoughts together about whether this is a 4 or a 3. So we're going to core pile it and determine it via that, because I do feel like I actually need to break this one down, because there are some elements that I think are really good and other elements that are weak. Also, enjoy the artwork of my Cousin Strab party that I run the game for. I love them. They're so cute, they're so angsty, but these is my party. Anyway, back to Hellbent. So we'll rate the core pile. You basically rate each of these elements out of 10, and then you divide it by 7 to determine what the overall rating is. It gives you a score, and then the score amount, just looking at this, basically determines what star it is. So let's go for it. Characters. I'm going to give this an 8. I think characters is one of the strongest elements of this book for me. However, I'm not super in love to the point that I'm getting really emotional about any of the characters, so it has to be an 8 and not a 9. I think they're really great with some characterization and I enjoy them, but I'm not in love with them. So we're getting an 8. Atmosphere setting is also going to get an 8. I think it's a pretty good setting. In this book, I enjoy the setting. I enjoy how the academic environment really does lean into what we're doing. I don't really enjoy the city stuff that much, but I like the contrast. I liked all the hell stuff. I thought that was fun. So we're getting an 8 again. Writing style. Really do enjoy Lee Bardugo's writing style in this book. We're going to go with an 8 again, because there's definitely elements where I'm like, I love the writing, but sometimes I feel like it's too overlong, and there are certain choices that are made that I'm not always keen on. So we're going to go with an 8 again. Plot. This is where we're going to start to get a lower number. I think the plot was way too long and a bit over repetitive. I like the overall arc of the plot and where it took our characters to, but I think we're going to have to go with 6 for this one, because I just had a lot of issues with it. It would be a 5, but because I like that we did eventually pull all the different storylines together, I'm raising it slightly to a 6. Intrigue. We're going to go with 5 out of 10. It lost me a lot, unfortunately, during this book. Again, a case of I think of it being too overlong, and I just didn't care about the plot elements that were not the main storyline. I didn't really care about what was happening with the murders happening on campus, with all the stuff with like the dealer or whatever that was trying to get involved with Alex. Wasn't a fan, so we're going to put this down to a 5 because I only really cared about one plotline. Logic relationship. Oh, I'm between a 6 and a 7, I think, for this, because I think there was a lot of logic gaps, to be honest. There were some aspects of the relationships I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed getting to know more about Turner, having Alex know more about Turner, and people like Mercy and Trip become more important in the plot line, but also could have done about it, I think, at times. I'm going to go over 6, I think. And the enjoyment, also a 6. I did enjoy elements of it, but there was so much that really kind of put me off. Actually, you know what? We're 5ing it, because I didn't come out of this book feeling satisfied. So we're going to add that up and divide it by 7. Done that. That is the final number. We're like a 6.5, which according to this means it is a 3-star, a high 3. And you know what? I think I'm happy with that. If I have to compare it to Ninth House, which I gave a low 4, I preferred Ninth House over Hellbent in terms of how tight the plot was. And whilst I definitely did enjoy elements of Hellbent, and I still think the writing was gorgeous, there was a lot more I didn't like in this book. So yeah, you know what? A high 3, I think, is what we're giving Hellbent. Hello, you got to put up with me looking a little bit raggedy. I had to run yesterday, as you saw, if the film got cut off really quickly because my lift was there because we were going out to the zoo, me and my friends. It was actually my birthday yesterday. Look how cute this jumper is. My mum knitted it for me for my birthday. I picked out the wool and she's got really into knitting recently, so she made me this and a matching set of mittens, scarf and hat in it for my birthday. It's so cute and comfortable. And I also got books given to me by my friends, bless them. I kind of like gave a list to my friend of stuff that I like, and they've got me a couple of books between them. So they picked me up Miss Rule, which is the second book in the Sapphic Sleeping Beauty book by Heather Walter. Barrier Gaze by Chuck Tingle, which I read last year and really enjoyed, and one I haven't read yet, which is Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drew, which I'm really excited to read this. So yeah, I had a really nice day. We went to the zoo, we saw lots of cute animals. I am thoroughly charmed now by painted dogs and spider monkeys. But back to the actual books in question we're talking about for this video. So yeah, I was just so torn about this book and what rating to give it, so I had to core pile it. I feel now that I've core piled it, I feel that this is the right rating to give for me. I think I did overall enjoy Ninth House more than I did Hellbent, even though Hellbent definitely expands on the story more and gets bigger, but some of the problematic elements that I didn't like in this definitely were still present in this, unfortunately. And overall, I did just find this to be kind of an exhausting, not very enjoyable reading experience. And I think I'd just come to the conclusion that Leigh Bardugo as an author is maybe just not for me. I've tried multiple series by her now, and I tried reading Shadow and Bone way back in the day, didn't really like it, never read past the first book. I really did enjoy the Six of Crows duology, and that is my favourite by her. I would say in terms of ranking, this series probably comes in after Six of Crows duology, and I read The Familiar last year, which was her historical kind of fantasy, but a bit more literary fiction sort of book, and I didn't really enjoy that. So I think I've just come to the conclusion that for me, Leigh Bardugo it doesn't really work. I'm not really interested in King of Scars series, which is the follow-up to Six of Crows. I've not heard great things about it, and I think I'm just gonna admit to myself that Six of Crows duology is maybe the only books by her I really love, and I'm maybe just gonna not keep trying with her anymore because I just get disappointed by her. And I feel honestly kind of torn about this series. I think I'm probably gonna unhaul it, because I don't know if I ever want to reread these, because they just made me feel so mixed and I just wasn't satisfied by the series. Again, it's just frustrating because it has some great ideas. There's some truly beautiful writing in here, like the amount of tabs I put into this book because of the beautiful writing and stuff I wanted to talk about, which I didn't end up talking about because I cancelled that video where I read this book, and I just think I find it frustrating. And it has made it clear at the end of this that we are possibly going to be continuing the Alex Stern series. I've not seen or heard anything yet about if Leigh Bardugo is writing the third book in this series, but I just don't think I care anymore, unfortunately, about this. I think it had some great ideas and some great things, but honestly, I just think I would rather read other writers, and I don't think this is for me. So we're not doing very well, really. Reading the fantasy books, with Starling House, I did enjoy it, but it wasn't amazing to me. This was a frustrating read. It really is all relying on if I actually enjoy The Will of the Many or not. I'm really hoping I do. I'm not going to be picking this up for probably a week or so, just because I'm reading other things at the moment for a different video, but then I am going to be picking this up, and I have high hopes, I will say, and I really want to love this. I want to have a win of these 3 fantasy books, but we'll see. I really hope so though. I went to the charity shop. I need to be tamed! Hello, update time. I am close to the halfway point on Will of the Many, and I'm really enjoying this, which I'm so happy about. I was really hoping this would live up to the expectations of what I've heard about it, and thankfully it is, which is good. I'm having a great time. It's not a particularly quick-paced book. Literally the first 200 pages or so was just the lead up and like training before the main character Viz goes into the academy. I'm now where he's at the academy, and I'm really quite enjoying this. Like, if it wasn't for the darker like subject matter of what's going on here, this could almost be YA because of the whole magical school thing, but I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying the main character. I'm enjoying him figuring out what he's going to do, making alliances, that kind of thing, and the world building is really interesting, and I like all the characters so far. So yeah, honestly, no complaints. I think it's just been a really good, interesting book. I can't work out if it's Greek inspired or Roman inspired. Everyone kind of wears togas and stuff, so I want to say Roman. Yeah, having a good time. With any luck, this could even be a 5-star, which is what I'm hoping. Hello, I am coming down with a cold, so if my voice sounds a little bit raspy, that is why, but I am just popping in to say I am now officially past the halfway point. Honestly, because I have no evening plans, I may just sit on the sofa and read the whole rest of this book. I'm still really thoroughly enjoying this. I am already really looking forward to the sequel. I may have to pre-order it. Yes, I know it's not going to have the matching cover, but honestly, if I hate the dust jacket that much, I might just make my own version that mimics this one and have my own dust jackets on them, because I do like to own books physically. But yeah, really enjoying it. Yeah, Viz is getting deeper and finding out more secrets, and I feel like we have so much more twists to come. We had a major twist a couple of chapters ago, which was really interesting. And yeah, I'm just having a great time, and this is definitely my favourite fantasy book in this video. I'm so happy there's a win. And here we see an accurate depiction of how I felt after finishing The Will of the Many. Hello, I'm here to close off the video because I have indeed finished The Will of the Many. If I sound awful, it's just that I've got a really bad cold right now. I'm fighting through it to get this video finished. It started when I was like halfway through Will of the Many. But yeah, my throat hurts right now, but I did indeed finish The Will of the Many. Like, once I got to that halfway point, I pretty much just sat all night and finished it. Granted, that was also because I was coming down with a cold and I just didn't want to move, but this was like the perfect companion for me whilst I was suffering through the early bits of me getting a cold. I really loved this. As you saw from my animated reaction of my good friend Frank, this was so good, and I'm so happy to finish this project, this video, with a 5-star. This was easily a 5-star. I had such a good time with this. I really loved it. Again, an epic fantasy that really worked for me, which is so nice, and it's making me realise that there is still epic fantasy out there. I'm really enjoying, I realise, like these political outmaneuverings that you get in certain books, like The Will of the Many, like Blood Over Brighthaven. Honestly, even like The Crimson Moth, a lot of that is really smart people having to outsmart other people, and that is obviously a lot about what this book is. It's also, again, it does kind of fall into a lot of the typical magical school tropes, but it does them in a really fun way. The whole thing is that the school is supposed to mirror society for them, except that they can't use will, so it puts them all on a level footing, except they're not really on a level footing because half the people there are all from rich families and senators, and all that kind of background influences how people are treated. People progress through the classes all the way up to class 3. Everyone in 7th is kind of considered like the lower classes basically, and don't really associate with people in the other classes. They're expected to like do what people in the higher classes say, and obviously, yeah, class 3 is basically the elite, and they are the class that gets to undergo these trials, which is obviously what our main character Viz is aiming for, which basically makes one of them Domitor. the head of the academy, like head boy, essentially, who has their pick of whatever job they like when they graduate. It was so good. This was like relentlessly action-packed, things always happening, and yet I still really got like attached to the characters. Like, Kaleidos is my boy. I love that child so much, and I really enjoyed the friendships that Viz made. I definitely saw a certain thing coming, I will say, with a particular betrayal towards the end, but I still liked how it was done, and I can also see why Viz did not see it coming, despite him being the kind of person who's supposed to not trust people, because so much of what happens in this book is about him starting to trust people again when he's only ever had himself, and learning who to trust and starting to like move on from his past. This is a person who is very much defined by his past. His whole purpose is because of what happened to him in his past. And there's a really good moment where he gets to confront this past and he starts to be able to accept what happened and move on from it. And maybe his like single-minded revenge is not the only thing that needs to define his existence. It was so good. I really, really highly recommend it if you've not checked this out yet. I feel like I'm one of the last people to read this book at this point, to be honest, but I'm glad that this video finally made me pick it up. So yeah, we end on a really big high. I really love this. It was definitely the best of the fantasy books I read this video. I unfortunately had a couple of misses there, really. Not bad books, but Starling House and Hellbent were just not quite it for me. So we're going to go and do the comparison then with the rest of the fantasy books, because I had actually read a bunch of the other books from this genre, and we'll see where this sits. Oh, this is going to be tough because I know it's at least one of a 5-star in that ranking. Okay, so looking at what we have, I have 2 5-stars, so it's going to be difficult to weigh up. In fact, I have the other book right here, The Adventures of Me and Elsa Rafi, so I'm going to have to pit these two together. And oh my gosh, I actually don't know how these are going to weigh up for me right now. Actually, no, I do know. In total, I actually read 8 books from the fantasy category, 3 in this video, and I'd read 5 previously, just because there were books that I'd already read. I had very mixed thoughts, honestly, for a lot of these fantasy books. Actually, no, one also was in this video, I forgot, because it was in the debut category. But very mixed. I feel like my opinion on some of these ones that are quite popular is not the majority opinion. So let's get off with that right away. At the very bottom slot for me, I gave this a 2-star, Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. I really like a lot of Cassandra Clare's books, but this just did not work for me. It was way too long, it was way too slow, and I feel like, again, nothing really happened in that book, and I just didn't enjoy the plot line. I didn't enjoy a lot of the characters, and it just didn't work for me, unfortunately. I really, really wanted to love it, but this was just a big no for me. I'm just going to stick with Shadowhunters, I think, for Cassandra Clare. I did not enjoy the Castellane Chronicles at all, so that is my very bottom spot. Hated it. It was like one of my worst books of that year, I think. Then we've got a scattering of 3 stars, and I've rated all these very similarly. So we have Hellbent, Tress of the Emerald Sea, and Starling House next. I think I'm going to put Tress of the Emerald Sea next. It just didn't really work for me, unfortunately. Again, Brandon Sanderson, really popular author. A lot of people love this book. This is a bit of a retelling of The Princess Bride, except from the princess's perspective. It is about a girl who goes on an adventure to rescue her lover, who is a noble on the island where she lives. It's got really cool world building. I really did enjoy the world building, and I didn't really enjoy this book for the first half, unfortunately. When she got onto the ship, and she was with a whole cast of characters, and I enjoyed that part of it, but overall, this book was just a miss for me, unfortunately. I gave it a 3.75 though, because there was still elements of it that I thought was good, but honestly, if I'm gonna go back and re-rate that, it's more of a 3.5. Honestly, maybe a low 3, because it just didn't work for me. Then I think I'm gonna have to put Starling House. It was good. It was just a little bit predictable for me, unfortunately, and it just didn't quite get to the heights that I really hoped I was going to get from it. It was more of a subtle story, and when you're competing against big epic things, those stories just don't always hold up, unfortunately. It also was one of the lower ranked ones, and I can see why. but I'm also happy it was in there because I still think it had like a really good story in it. It was just a much quieter, simpler story than I think a lot of the other books are in this category, which I think was to its detriment. Then I would put my last 3-star, Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. Again, a book that I think did some amazing things, had some absolutely gorgeous writing, just did some things that really turned me off the series, unfortunately, and kind of the author too. So yeah, a book that I really hoped I was going to love, but unfortunately it kept on some of the issues that I struggled with in Ninth House, so it didn't even hit that 4-star for me in the end. Then we have 2 4-star books. You know what, I'm shifting the ranking on this because I know which one has stuck with me more, and it isn't the one that I read back in debut. I'm actually going to put Ink Blisters to Scribe next. I gave it a 4.5. I think it's more of a low 4. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed everything that happened in it, and it's just kind of faded from my memory a little bit. It hasn't stuck with me, and I think that unfortunately means it has to be ranked lower than Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This was a book that for me, when I was reading it, felt like a high 3, low 4, and it just stuck with me. Something about this book like has just clawed its way into me, and I love this series so much. I think it's just a mix of like really good world building, really good characters, and I like where the story went because I picked this up thinking it was going to be a cozy fantasy, and it actually got a lot darker and deeper and more emotional as the story went on towards the end, and I enjoyed where the story took it because I didn't think we were getting to a high stakes territory in that first book, and we did, and I really enjoyed that. So yeah, Emily Wilde just has to be Ink Blisters to Scribe for that reason, because it got kind of epic for me, and I wasn't expecting it from what is a light academia cozy fantasy kind of book, and it's a series I've stuck with, and I've really enjoyed the second book too. I haven't read the third book yet, but I will be shortly, which means that we are just at our battle of the 5 stars at this point. And as much as this book made me scream and get really upset and really enjoyed the characters, and I will definitely be following on this series, I'm obsessed with the Images of Mineral Sarafi. I loved everything it did, and reading it, I felt like I was along for the ride. I was along for this adventure with Amina, with her crew, with her ex-lover, and I just had such a good time with it, and I did have a good time with this, but this gave me such a sense of fun and joy, which I really love, and I really like to get this in fantasy nowadays. I think this comes second place, but this wins for me because this was my best book of 2023. I loved this book so much, and I think as much as I love The Will of the Many, this is just me to a T. So yeah, that is the final rating, I guess, of the fantasies. I really wasn't sure there for a second, but I think it has to be Amina Al-Sarafi that wins it. So all we have to do now, really, is a bit of an overview of sorts of this project and take a look at all the books in general, because I'm curious to see which genre has won. Okay, so I have my ranking up here below. Interestingly, I had a decent number of 5 stars in this series, whether they were books that I read previous to this series or that I read through the course of this video. In terms of 5 stars for fantasy, you've already seen them. I had Amina Al-Sarafi and Will of the Many. In YA fiction, I had We Deserve Monuments. I have 2 for Romantasy because I'd already read Fourth Wing and loved it. That was a 5-star for me. But then I read Road of the Fallen for this project and loved it, 5-star. Then we have to skip to historical because Wayward was a 5-star for me, which was a really nice surprise. Actually seeing the author this week, funnily enough, because she's doing an event in the UK to promote her new book Siren. Fiction, Yellowface was of course a 5-star. I had 1 5-star. I want to almost say 2 in sci-fi because I'd already read In the Lives of Puppets and that was a 5-star, but I really think Chain Gang All Stars is a 5-star, even though I sort of have put it as like a high 4, but I think it was just so good it can't not be a 5-star. For YA fantasy, I had Divine Rivals, which is a 5-star, unfortunately not one I read for this video, and then debut, not really another 5-star, it's just Wayward again, which won and won justifiably. Yeah, those are the 5 stars. I definitely had a lot of like misses in this video, unfortunately. And now I'm gonna tell you the ranking from lowest to highest of the genres and like my average rating for them. And we're gonna find out which is my worst genre and which is my best genre for the Goodreads Awards. Who knows, maybe I will commit to reading what is the best genre for me going forward, because it seems to be a genre that works for me. Kind of not a surprise, but also what I'm kind of sad about, because I really thought it was going to be another category. Right at the bottom is history. History and biography, I believe, is the actual title. 2.91 average out of 5, this is, by the way. That's really bad. And honestly, a lot of this is down to the fact that the one book I thought was going to work for me, I hated. Killing the Witches. I read The Wager, which was a 3, The Six, which was a mid to low 3, and Killing the Witches was a 2. So that, oh, not good, not good. I know I'm not really a non-fiction reader anyway, but I do think that if I'm gonna read non-fiction, I thought history was something I would like. And these books just did not work for me, unfortunately. The Six was the best one of the bunch. Then we have the category that I assumed was going to be in the lowest, and that's humour, with an average rating of 3.5 out of 5. Again, this is mostly the fault of one book, and that one book is Being Henry. Because strong female character, I really liked. That was a 4 star. Leslie Effing Jones was a high 3, and then Being Henry was a 2. So, really killed the average there. Thanks, Henry. Next, a little bit of a surprise, but also not really, because it's a genre I've started to enjoy, but also a genre that is never a favourite genre of me. It's more of a popcorn genre for me, and that's mystery thriller. Yeah, a lot of these I just find kind of predictable. And again, I have an average rating of 3.5, so actually this is the same as humour, but I rated mystery thriller higher because I think I had an overall better enjoyment and success rate with it than I did with humour. But yeah, obviously The Housemaid's Secret really killed that for me with a 2. And none of this is true, and the only one left were fine. I didn't love them, but they were fine reads. And the only one I really enjoyed was Bright Young Women. Then going up to a 3.75 average. In fact, the next 2 genres of 3.75, I've had to weight them. But first, we're going to go with YA fiction. And this doesn't surprise me either, because I think a lot of YA fiction is more of a miss for me. I just prefer fantasy. I always will. And a lot of what I was seeing in the YA fiction category was like thrillers. It's all like, obviously YA fiction is mostly contemporary, and it's either mostly going to be, from what I saw, romance, or it's going to be thriller. These are the ones I hitting in the category, and I did not enjoy the YA thriller that was in there. That was 5 Survive. I had already read Check and Mate, however, which I did really enjoy. That was a 4-star read for me. Voice of Dead Monument, obviously, I loved. So once again, proving though that YA fiction definitely still has merit for me. And then I had a rom-com, which was Never Getting Back Together, which was like a 3. It was fine. Yeah, not a great showing from YA fiction. Romantasy doesn't surprise me at being in the lower end of the list, because I find romantasy to be such a hit or a miss genre with me, which you can really see with the ratings. I had 2 5 stars with Fourth Wing and Throne of the Fallen, and then I hated Assistant to the Villain, and I just wasn't really keen on the Foxglove King or the Hanging City. So a very hit and miss genre for me, also at 3.75. Then a genre which I honestly thought was going to be in the top, and I'm kind of sad it isn't, and it's horror. It's a 3.8 average, and I honestly just think I read the wrong books from this genre. Like, I had to read The Winner, obviously, which I didn't like. I didn't like Holly, and it's the first Stephen King book I think I've not really enjoyed, which is kind of sad. How to Sell a Haunted House was okay. Rouge was okay. Monstrilio was better than okay, but didn't really give me what I wanted from it. I really wanted this to be a 5-star read from everything I'd heard. And I didn't even get a 5-star read. The most I had was a low 4, and that is A House of Good Bones by T. Kingfisher, who is an author who I know and love anyway, and that was my favourite one. And none of these books really scared me either. So a big miss from horror, which is why, weirdly enough, non-fiction beat it with a 3.83 average. I only read 3 books from that, but 2 of them were really solid, which is Poverty by America and But's a Backstory. And I wasn't very keen on Doppelganger, but overall, I read decently from that genre, which is a real surprise for me. Also a real surprise, coming in after it, we are hitting like the top end now, because we're hitting a 4 out of 5 average, is romance. A shock. I had 2 4-star reads from that, with Love Theoretically and The 7-Year Slip. I didn't really enjoy Happy Place, but I would potentially read more Emily Henry. Also wasn't the worst book I'd ever read. So yeah, explain that to me. Then it's fantasy, also with a 4, but I've weighted it higher because I actually had 5 stars in fantasy, but I read 8 books, so it shifted the average down because I had a couple of books I really didn't like. I'm not going to go over those because I just went over them, but it matched romance, which is really shocking to me. Then it's historical with a 4.08 average. I had my miss for that one was Lady Tan's Circle of Women. It was just kind of predictable and didn't really interest me towards the end. I quite liked Covenant of Water despite it being a behemoth of a book. And then Wayward was a 5-star. I loved it. Then memoir, which doesn't surprise me because I do like memoirs historically anyway, and most of these were decent. In fact, the only one that has like an under a 4-star is the one I didn't read in the video, and that was Page Boy by Elliot Page. I just didn't think it needed to be a memoir at this stage of his life. I felt there was more that could have been said. But yeah, How to Say Babylon was my favourite of that one, which I really loved. I definitely want to check out more by the author now. I enjoyed The Woman in Me by Britney Spears, and The Witching Girl was also good. Then we have fiction with a 4.18. I had my 5-star obviously with Yellow Face. Didn't enjoy Hello Beautiful, really. I gave it a low 3, but I did really enjoy The Wishing Game and Shark Heart. Then sci-fi, which has a much more respectful average rating than I was expecting, because I also feel like sci-fi is such a hit or miss genre for me. But I had technically 2 5-stars in The Lies of Puppets and Chain Gang All Stars. I really enjoyed Land of Milk and Honey. Translation State was a weird one for me that I feel like I want to retry, and I think maybe its rating could increase on a retry, and I didn't really like Star Villain. So yeah, a better showing than I expected. So in the second place is YA fantasy and sci-fi, which did so much better than adult fantasy, amazingly. It has a 4.56 average, which is amazing. Only 1 5-star with Divine Rivals, but all 3 of the books I read through the video were 4 stars. The lowest was Blood Debts, then What the River Knows, and then A Study of Drowning was like almost a 5-star for me. I've really enjoyed these books. And then the winner, one I did not even expect to make a showing, but honestly it makes sense because it can be any genre, is debut novel with 4.6 average out of 5. That is insane. I had 1 5-star with Wayward, but then every other book was like a mid to high 4. Monstrilio was like a low 4. But like all these I kind of read for other genres as well, but English to Scribe was a mid 4. Chain Gang All Stars was like basically a 5. Shark Heart was a mid 4. And that was my favourite genre. So that's really making me realise that debut novels are really ones I need to keep reading. So yeah, that is the final rating, and that is it finally for this Goodreads video. I definitely have more Goodreads projects I want to do in the future, but I'm glad to be giving this a break now because it really was kind of wearing me down a little bit. I'm definitely not going to do this again where I like try every single genre, but I think this was a really good experiment that made me look at all the genres in a way that maybe I haven't. But I do think I'm going to stick to my more traditional genres of horror, fantasy, sci-fi, I guess romantasy in the future to read primarily from, but I'm definitely going to look more at those other genres because I'm really surprised how well some of those genres that I just didn't really think about did. I do think that the next Goodreads thing I'm going to do is probably when it comes to the 2025 Goodreads Awards. I'm likely going to be trying to read all of the horror category, and hopefully I will have a better win than I had in this project because horror was such a mixed bag for me in this video. But yeah, that is it. That is the final rating. What won? Debut. And what was the biggest myth for me? History, which I don't know. Weird. That is it from me. If you stayed with me throughout the whole of this project, thank you so much. I know it's maybe not been the most interesting of video series, but I have had a good time with it. Feel free to drop me some kind of emoji in the bottom. You know what? Because The Will of the Many was a success of this video, drop me like a set of scales or something down there if you've managed to get to the end of this video and enjoyed this whole series in general. And that's it from me, thankfully. No more talking for a bit, I'm going to rest my voice. But as always, stay safe, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!